Something appears to have changed.
Nick, we need help at B.
What?
We need backup at B, like right now, dude.
What?
We need backup at B right now.
There's nothing wrong with my knee.
I'm not asking about your knees. I need help at B.
I don't need any tea.
I need help at B.
Oh, that's what you were saying. My bad.
Don't let loud fans ruin your friendships. Quiet things down with the new Venturi airflow and static pressure fans from Fractal Design. Click the link below for more details. Hey, what's up guys, JayzTwoCents here, and just having a little fun with my friends over at Tech Syndicate because they sent me some swag. As you can see, I've always loved this shirt. I never bought one because I was shrinking too fast and anything I was buying wasn't fitting anyway. So here we are wearing my brand new Tech Syndicate shirt, which is very, very comfortable, I might add. I might actually have to get some shirts made myself one of these days.
The music that you are hearing was called Svalhanda, and it's available here down the link in the description.
Anyway, no, they did not ask me to do that, guys. Do not go and start flaming Logan. I'm doing this all on my own because I like the music. I bought the album. So anyway, let's go ahead and move on to today's topic. So I told you guys I felt like we were lacking at a lot of how-tos and educational stuff when it comes to water cooling. And as you can see, I've made no progress on the build behind me. But I did say I was going to talk about some more how-tos and some educational stuff using this build as kind of a guideline and a reference on some of the I guess the theories and the practical applications when it comes to water cooling. Now today we are going to specifically be talking about push-pull, and push-pull configurations, where they apply, where you should put them, and which one you should actually consider using. Now, push-pull is sometimes, people get very confused on where to use push-pull. Now let's go ahead and talk about the radiator here. This is a radiator. If you didn't know that, then you're already well behind the curve and you might want to start back at the beginning. Anyway, this is a 120 millimeter radiator here from Hardware Labs. It's a perfect example for what we're going to be doing here. Now, in order for this to do anything, you have to move air through the radiator. If air is not moving through the radiator, it will just heat soak and get hotter and hotter, and the fins can't do anything because air has to move across these fins to actually dissipate the heat. Now, when it comes to moving the air, obviously you're going to be attaching fans. So we have got two Vardar fans here from EK Water Blocks. Yes, these are black ones, and these are available now in black and white in varying RPMs. Hooray for that, because the black and the gray just didn't suit a lot of people's builds aesthetics. Now, typically what people will do, kind of like I've done back here on the system behind me, at least what I prefer to do personally, is use a push configuration. Now, push is where you have the radiator here, and then you have the fan that is actually pushing air through the fins. So the direction of travel is going to be from fan, through the radiator. That's a push. You are pushing the air through the radiator. It's amazing how many people don't get that concept, but that's what it's doing. Now, a pull configuration, if you're astute, you might have already realized, is just the opposite. You have got the fan on the outside of the radiator pulling air through, where it is going to be drawing air through the side that has nothing on it, through the fins, and then exhausted out the other side. Now, push-pull, I don't know if you guys, now follow along, you might not get this one. This one's actually kind of hard. Push-pull is when you have a fan on either side of the radiator, one side pushing, the other side pulling. Now that we've got all three of those different types of applications out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about where these apply inside of your case, because believe it or not, where the radiator is inside of your case matters just as much as the type of fans and fan configuration that you use. Now, I'll go ahead and slide this guy closer to me here. And actually, you guys can get a really good sense of just how small this case really is. I am using a pull configuration on the front and a push configuration on the top. Now, how can you tell? Well, because the fans are inside of the radiator, pulling air in from the front rather than pushing. On the top here, I've got a push configuration, pushing air out of the top. Now, when it comes to the efficiency and the airflow of these two types of configurations, there's a lot of debate out there on which is better. And believe it or not, push versus pull makes negligible difference when it comes to the amount of cooling and or air pressure, because the fan itself is still having to overcome the same amount of resistance that is inside the radiator. So it doesn't matter if the fan is on this side, and it doesn't matter if the fan is on this side pulling air or pushing air, the amount of resistance a la the radiator is the same. Now, when this is going to become a little bit more complicated is when you have more resistance. Now, what makes more resistance? Well, more fins. In this case, we have a high fin density radiator because we're running a thinner radiator, or having a thicker radiator with the same fin density. But typically, as radiators get thicker, the fin density gets less, so airflow is actually improved. Otherwise, if you had a 60 or even an 80 millimeter radiator, having one fan in push or pull on either side of it is going to have a lot of pressure to overcome in terms of resistance and static pressure that's going to be needed with high RPMs or high static pressure fans. Now, I know that that might have just gone really quickly and confused a lot of people. So let me just go ahead and kind of give you my recommendations. Now, let's go ahead and start with 30 millimeter thick radiators, which is what I've got in here right now. Now, one might be asking themselves, Jay, why are you pulling air in and pushing air out? This has nothing to do with anything more than aesthetics. I wanted the fans to be visible. But remember what I said earlier, when it comes to push-pull, the amount of pressure needed and the amount of resistance isn't changing between either of these two configurations. So the difference in cooling is negligible. In fact, a lot of people have done tons and tons and tons of benchmarking on this type of data and have found that it's only 1 or 2 degrees Celsius difference between either in any situation, which is usually accounted for by margin of error or difference of ambient temperatures when the tests were performed. So it really doesn't matter. So in this case, if I had done push on the top and push on the front, you would have had the radiator showing here and the fans showing here, which would have looked incredibly imbalanced. So if you're going with a single set of fans like this, it's okay to switch around push, in this case, the air out the top, or pull, air in the front, with the fans on either side. If I had wanted the radiators to show and not the fans, I would have done just the opposite. I would have taken these fans that are under the radiator, mounted them between the radiator and the case. The radiator would be sitting right here without the fans showing, and then I would have swapped the front just like that. I would have had the radiator here where the fans are, fans in front, and all you would have had was white radiator showing, and it would have made no difference whatsoever to the cooling. Now, push-pull, since you're going to have a fan on either side of it, like this, it's really not going to matter how you install it because it's going to look the same. So let's say I was putting this radiator in the bottom, right down here, and I was going for a push-pull configuration. It would end up looking something like that. But as you can see, that adds a ton of thickness to even just a 30 millimeter radiator. Because on average, fans are only 25 millimeters thick, so that's 50 millimeters of fan thickness before you even account for a radiator. So if you're going to be using a thick radiator, like a 60 mil or even an 80 millimeter radiator, then you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of clearance to be able to clear that amount of height. That's one of the reasons why I don't do push-pull. I think it's very difficult to make something like this look clean all around the case, even if it's a big case. But there are benefits to doing push-pull versus push or pull. Now, I've already told you I recommend and personally like one fan that's high static pressure at a moderate RPM on thinner radiators where capable. In fact, on Skunkworks, if you guys recall, I went from 45 millimeter thick radiators down to 30 millimeter thick radiators and saw absolutely no difference in cooling dissipation. It didn't gain any additional temperature, and I'm actually cooling hotter graphics cards with thinner rads. Yeah, of course I added the 280 in there, but that was pretty much because I wanted some extra insurance in terms of cooling. It's really hot where I live. Push-pull can overcome thick radiators, and you can slow down the fans so that they run really, really quiet. And we'll talk about the cons to that in a second. Now, if you want to make it as quiet as possible, having a fan like this running at, say, 50% or something like 800 RPM on one side is going to dramatically reduce its performance. Because remember, when it comes to the fan specifications, the amount of static pressure and airflow that you're seeing is pretty much always measured at maximum RPMs. So in this case, if this is a 2200 RPM fan, and I'm running it at 800 RPM or 1000 RPMs, I'm not going to be getting anywhere near the static pressure that's being advertised on the box. So if I want to slow this down for the sake of silence and put it on either side, push or pull, I am dramatically reducing the amount of air that I'm moving through this radiator. And not only that, the amount of air I'm helping flow through the case. In this instance here, I've got most of the airflow in the case being handled by fans with radiators on them, minus the one right here in the rear, which is why I'm considering putting this radiator in the bottom so that I could actually get more airflow inside of this case, more intake to match the exhaust. So what you're able to do is you can put two very slow speed fans on either side, maintain good static pressure and good airflow evenly across the radiator, and run them much lower RPMs for much, much less acoustics. But the downside to that is you've got twice as many fans going in your system. So on a small case like this with only two 240 millimeter radiators, if I was to do a push-pull, I would end up with 4, 8, 10, 11 fans in this tiny little case. That would have made it very crowded. It would have also made controlling those fans very, very difficult. There's no way I could have done it without some sort of fan controller. Now I like to run my fans off the motherboard and use software where possible and splitters on motherboards that have headers that can handle at least 1 amp of power draw. That's not the case on this guy right here because we don't have enough fan headers to be able to control 11 fans. So that's why I'm going with 2, 4, 5, maybe 6, depending on which configuration that I go with. I'm pretty sure I'm going to end up with this radiator down here in the bottom. I just haven't decided where I'm going to put my reservoir and stuff because I kind of only have a space right here. But as you can see, the fittings are right there. Unless I turn, this guy around, then I have a lot of crazy bends. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But anyway, when it comes to push-pull, the most important things to take away from this video is 1, push or pull, it's the same thing. People are going to argue this. I don't really care what people argue. The bottom line is it's negligible difference between the two. Push-pull is really good for high density and thick radiators that need to have static pressure maintained across a lot of resistance, or smaller radiators or thinner radiators or even thick radiators that you want to keep the acoustics low and spin the fans really, really slow. So that's really it when it comes to push-pull. There seems to be a lot of confusion in the community about which is better, where to use it, and why. Really, the bottom line is it's more important to maintain balanced airflow across your case than it is to balance the airflow across your radiator. Last example of that, and we'll talk about case balancing here again in the future. I've done one of these videos already about case pressure, but I talked about that more in an open airflow environment and not something with radiators, and this is something to also keep in mind. On Skunkworks, I have 3 120 millimeter airflow fans on the front, but I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fans exhausting air. So a lot of people ask me, well, Jay, why do you have 3 intake fans and 5 exhaust fans? Isn't that going to be negative airflow or air pressure in the case, which means 1, you're reducing cooling to the radiator, and 2, you're pulling in dust through all the cracks? Well, remember what I said about resistance? Just because this fan could flow, let's say 60 CFM at high RPM, the moment you put resistance in front of or behind that fan, you have cut down the amount of airflow. So air balancing is where you have the same amount of airflow coming in as you do going out, or greater airflow coming in than you do going out for positive pressure. You've got to account for the amount of resistance in front of those fans that are exhausting, which is why in Skunkworks I still have positive pressure with 3 wide open fans on the front and 4 radiator fans and 1 case fan exhausting. Well, if you guys want to see more about that, let me know. Maybe we'll do some demonstrations with like smoke and incense and stuff so you guys can see how 3 intake fans can create positive pressure over more exhaust fans that are either spinning slower or have more resistance when it comes to the radiators. Let me know, guys, too, if you thought I threw too much information at you on this one. I know it might have gone really quickly. I hope you guys understand what I said. I really don't know of any other way to explain it. It's just the way it works. So guys, thanks for watching today's video. Hope you guys have enjoyed it. Hope you guys have learned something. That's most important. And again, thanks to the guys over at Tech Syndicate for sending me the swag. I think I rep Tech Syndicate pretty well. All right, guys, time to get on out of here. As always, we will see you in the next one.